माय यूट्यूब चैनल द सोलफुल डायरी। आज के वीडियो में हम बात करेंगे मुल्क राज आनंद के वर्क स्वॉर्ड एंड द सिकल के बारे में। इससे पहले हम कुली, अनटचेबल, अक्रॉस द ब्लैक वाटर्स, द विलेज डिस्कस कर चुके हैं, जिसका लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन में है। चलिए शुरू करते हैं आज के वीडियो। Sword and the Sickle की story. The Sword and the Sickle is the final installment in Anand's Lalu trilogy, so called because the three novels trace the life of Lalu. The first book, The Village, 1937, gave us the background to Lalu's life, his frustrations with traditional peasant life in Punjab, and his eventful decision to join the British Indian Army. The second book, Across the Black Waters, 1939, followed him in his army life to the European front, where he fought against German troops in the Great War. Now, in this last novel, which opens in 1980, we see Lalu back in India. The story begins when he gets to the end of a long train ride and rejoins his regiment in the army barracks. Lalu has been a prisoner of war, but that experience raises suspicions about his loyalty and is hauled up before a military court and expelled on grounds of fraternizing with seditionists in Germany. Disillusioned with the army, he decides to return to his ancestral village in Nandpur, where he finds more disappointment. His mother is dead, his remaining brother Dayal has become a sadhu, and his family's land has been confiscated for debt repayment. The hated landlord Harbans Singh now lives in his family's old house, and his uncle works in the brick factory that the family saw as blighting the view over the fields. The countryside is hit by a famine, which stimulates local people to protest and join revolutionary groups. The only consolation is that Maya, the girl he had loved as a boy, is a widow, and they begin to live together. When some people in his village plan to attack Harbans Singh, Lalu does not join them. At the same time, he meets a Professor Verma who tells him about a revolutionary group led by a counter Rampal Singh. Lalu and Maya go and join the Count's group, but then discover that the Count is more Europeanized than Indian. While he can spout revolutionary analysis, he has no understanding of the people whom he wishes to liberate. Lalu goes on to protest march with the Count in Allahabad, where he meets Gandhi and has a conversation with him. He is as disillusioned with the Mahatma as he is with the Count. Lalu stays with the Count and is later arrested when he takes part in the protest march but is freed by an English magistrate. The final action is that after the Count's arrest, Lalu and many others demonstrate and protest. The police opens fire, many peasants are killed, and Lalu is arrested. The novel ends with the imprisoned Lalu learning that Maya has given birth to a son. Lalu then imagines the words he would like to have said to Maya if he had not been so self absorbed with the cause. We leave him languishing with little hope, except that he has let his hairs grow back, a symbolic acceptance of the tradition he had so vehemently rejected in the first book of the trilogy. Actors: Count Rampal Singh, a wealthy landowner in Uttar Pradesh who considers himself a revolutionary and mentor to the Kisan movement, though he is often disconnected from the ground reality. Professor Verma, a German associate of the Count who helps organize the peasants. Maya, Lalu's wife. Sukhua, a poor peasant who is evicted from his land and represents the plight of the marginalized peasant. Lalu. Lalu Singh is the character whose life is portrayed in Anand's trilogy, of which this is the third book. He's still the outspoken man of the earlier books, a person who passionately wants to improve conditions, but now he has the experience of fighting in the Great War in Europe, and after coming back to India in this village, he is disillusioned by everything, by the army who have unfairly expelled him, by the local landlords who exploit the peasants, and by the government who extract higher and higher taxes during a famine. Lalu's only consolation is that Maya, his sweetheart of earlier times, is a widow and ready to join with him in his pursuit of a solution in the poverty and degradation of the people. Lalu is also a still a daring man who is ready to join a revolutionary group because they appear to have a program for changing conditions. Again, however, he is disappointed as he is also with Gandhi's approach. Still, Lalu is deeply committed to reform, if not revolution, and he persists in fighting injustice and protesting against police violence. Slowly, he realizes that everything is flawed and finally turns back towards the traditional values that his father believed in. In the end, languishing in prison, Lalu is full of remorse that he has neglected his partner Maya, yet he is full of hope for the future. Lalu lives the life of political activist on the behalf of the Count. He spends time speaking for local peasant leaders, organizing protest marches, and giving speeches at rallies. He also spends a lot of time traveling either to town to drum up support for the cause or fleeing from the authorities. Lalu is arrested and imprisoned, where he spends many months, and even then, he is constantly trying to inspire his fellow inmates with a revolutionary talk. A key moment in Lalu's life when he has returned to India from Europe and rejoined his company in barracks. He is riding along in a train and wondering about the future. He has been expelled from the army for allegedly conspiring with sedentialists in Germany, and he is disillusioned when he sees the terrible conditions of the peasantry all around him. As the train rambles on, he questions the very existence of the British Raj. What were they doing in his country? He wonders. The Sahib's white people were no gods, as his experience in Europe in the army had shown him. The black men had a right to their own land and to their own country. When he expresses these half formed ideas to a group of soldiers on the train, he felt a growing belief in his own judgment. Lalo smiles to himself and wonders what he should do next. In a flash, it is decided a decision stimulated by his newly won self belief. My path is clear, he says to himself. I will go home. This is a significant decision because he had rejected his family and village in the first book of the trilogy. Now, more confident and mature, he realizes that he must begin to build his new life back where it had started. Back in his village, Lalu is introduced to a number of reform campaigns and revolutionary ideologies, communist and socialist groups, and political parties. He is disillusioned with them all and flounders in confusion until a moment arrives when he finds the foundation stone of a philosophy he can believe in. He is at public meeting at night where various speakers are discussing the best method of overthrowing the government and creating a state of peasants and workers. But something is wrong, he feels. They all, in one way or another, are dismissive of the peasants themselves, and this is when he realizes that any revolutionary plan needs to be grounded in a belief, the strength and wisdom of the people themselves. The author describes the scene like this. As Lalu contemplated them, the peasants in the half dark, he seemed to get faith and become hard. They seemed so gentle and innocent and immune from any other of the violence. They would be so naive if one talked to them about their plight, and they would not dare to let themselves be mastered by their hatred against those whom they had come to accept as their superiors, and yet they were stubborn and would resort to murder if they had a quarrel over a trickle of water in the fields. For behind the abjectness into which the gentleness of their religious faith, the power of their priests, and the force of their landlords had schooled them, behind the ashen deadness of the feeble frames, there still smoldered the energy of long generations, an energy strong enough for resistance, for ceaseless activity. This then becomes the cornerstone of Lalu's approach, trust in the strength of the people. Lalu has seen enough cruelty, heard enough impractical theorizing, witnessed enough violence, and experienced enough degradation to leave him thoroughly disillusioned. He has seen enough to reject every panacea and every great leader. including Gandhi, whom he has met. He has lost his father and mother as well as his two brothers. One is hung for murder and the other escapes poverty by becoming a wandering holy man. The family land has been confiscated in lieu of debt repayment, yet Lalu remains optimistic because he has discovered a source of strength that transcends politics. It is a love of life. He expresses this feeling in a dramatic moment at the very end of the book. He lies in prison having been told that Maya, his partner, has given birth to a boy. Despite everything, then, there is hope for the future. On the final page, we leave Lalu imagining the words he would say to calm Maya, who fears for his life in prison, and to encourage his fellow peasants and prisoners to join the struggle against the tyranny that is ruining the country. This is what he says. Two or three things are in my heart to say to you, Maya. You who have never known hunger, cold, and loneliness were always calling me back. You were always demonstrating, do not go, my love. But it is only after the fight against those who enslave, only after the struggle for the new way of life, that we shall rest and sing the seasons. Now is the time to change the world, to fight for life and for happiness. Themes: peasant exploitation and resistance. The sickle represents the downtrodden, unorganized peasantry struggling against zamindars, landlords, and forced labor. Political disillusionment and radicalism. Lalu tries to improve peasant conditions but becomes disillusioned with both Gandhian idealism and organized political movements that seem disconnected from the realities of rural life. Colonialism and imperialism. The sword symbolizes the brutal force of British colonial rule and the oppressive administrative apparatus. Revolutionary ideology versus reality. The novel contrasts high minded revolutionary theories with the practical, often messy, realities of political action in villages. The quest for self actualization following his return from a German prison and service in World War One, Lal Singh seeks to re-establish his identity, shifting from a naive soldier to a politically conscious actor within his home community. Peasants' exploitation and resistance. The story focuses on the brutal feudal exploitation of the rural people in Oath, focusing on the peasants' journey from passive suffering to active resistance, mirroring the sickle, the hero's disillusionment. Lal Singh Lalu returns from World War One and across the Black Waters to find his home in ruin, facing personal and political disappointment which shapes his revolutionary consciousness. Conflict of ideologies. Anand highlights the tension between Gandhian idealism, communist and revolutionary methods to change the peasantry's condition. Transition from traditional to modern. The narrative depicts the shattering of the old rural order due to the war and political movements, creating a conflict between traditional village life and the necessity for change. Ineffectiveness of revolution. Lalu's attempts at mobilizing the peasants are depicted as largely futile, highlighting the challenges of the revolutionary process. Symbols. Symbol of power and exploitation. The sword represents the powerful class, British colonialists, Indian landlords, and the feudal lords who possess the authority to suppress and destroy. Force and violence. It symbolizes the coercive power of the British Indian state, which is used to crush peasant dissent, exploit workers in fields and factories, and maintain colonial rule through brutal beggar forced labor. Colonialism, it embodies the white power that disrupts the traditional agrarian way of life of the Indian peasant, leading to the destruction of the old village system. The sickle. The sickle represents the oppressed class of India, specifically the exploited kisans or the peasants and laborers. It symbolizes the poor who face atrocities, high taxation, and land loss, but it also represents the budding peasants' consciousness and the beginning of organized resistance. The sickles is associated with the agricultural life of old UP and the peasant rallies organized by the Kisan Sabha Farmers Union aiming to break their shackles. The novel, which follows protagonist Lalu Singh after his return from a German prison in World War One, explores the conflict between these two forces. It emphasizes that while the sword attempts to make the sickle yield, the peasants' struggle for rights and self-actualization brings a new revolutionary and socialist consciousness, bringing life and action against death and exploitation. होप आज का वीडियो आपको पसंद है। कैसे लगे हमें कमेंट करके बताएं। और कोई डाउट्स या सजेशंस हो तो वो भी आप कमेंट सेक्शन में ड्रॉप कर सकते हैं। अगर वीडियो अच्छी लगी हो तो लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माय चैनल। मिलते हैं कल एक और इन्फॉर्मेटिव वीडियो के साथ शाम 4 बजे। टिल देन कीप वॉचिंग एंड कीप सपोर्टिंग द सोलफुल डायरी। थैंक यू।